Welcome to the Disability Support Services session. My name is Lynn Shattuck. I'm the Director of Disability Services at Rock Valley College.
And I'm Rhonda Yawn, and I'm the accommodation specialist. And I'm the point person that you would see when you have any questions or when you're first starting with our department.
So today we're going to cover our office and how new students can connect with us and how you can request accommodations. But before we get started, a couple of items I'd like to point out. We would love questions throughout our presentation, and we would encourage you to submit those through the Q&A box. We will try to answer them as they come in. And the session is being recorded, just to let you know about that. So a couple of the goals that we have today, we would like to share a little bit about who we are, what we do, how students can request accommodation that they have a disability, and also what some of the types of accommodations that we have available are. So our office is actually located in the Student Center. We're on the ground floor. We're directly across from the tutoring lab. We've got a number of staff members that reside in our office and consists of a wide variety of skill sets. Myself, the director, you've met Rhonda, and then in addition to us, we've got an assistive technology specialist whose primary role is to assist students with learning about technology, devices, different equipment that can benefit students that have disabilities and help them to be successful. We also have a couple of sign language interpreters whose primary role is to provide communication access, sign language interpreting to students that are deaf and hard of hearing. We have an administrative assistant, Gloria, who is kind of our point person for students needing to make appointments and just getting some general information. And then we have Marianne X, who runs our program on campus called RAISE for students that have intellectual disabilities. So who do we serve? Who can qualify for services through our department? Pretty much any student that has a documented disability. That is a requirement. We have to have some kind of documentation showing that there is the existence of a disability that impacts or creates a barrier to learning, or that would require, some type of accommodation. But that could be a permanent disability, or it could be a temporary disability. And that's really important because a lot of times I think students feel like if they don't have something that is permanent, that they wouldn't qualify for any kind of assistance. And we do every year serve a number of students that have temporary disabilities, and that could be anything from breaking an arm or a leg and needing temporary assistance with a note taker, for example, or maybe just a chronic health impairment or a condition that because of the nature of that, they may not always need accommodations, but there might be times, when that is necessary. So some of the common types of accommodations that students present with are, of course, learning disabilities, attention deficit disorders, autism spectrum, Asperger's, more and more psychological and mental health conditions, PTSD, bipolar, depression, anxiety, those are all becoming much more prevalent. And chronic health conditions, could be cancer, could be fibromyalgia, pain disorder, those kinds of things, vision impairments, deafness, hearing impairment. and intellectual or cognitive disabilities. So that list is not all inclusive, but those are some of the common types of disabilities that we serve. So how can a student who may need accommodation request that? Typically, we recommend that the student contact us. You can either call or complete the application online. We have an online application, and I'm going to show you how to get to that right now. I'm going to try. So if you go to the Rock Valley College website and go to Student Services, and then navigate over to our homepage, you will see a big blue button, and that is the access point to connect with us. So the DSS accommodation portal login is where you can initiate that process of completing the application, where it says new student, submit your application, fill that information out in as much detail as you can. That gives us some background on why you may need some accommodations and what those might be. And then once you submit that and complete that first step, you can see it's a little involved. There's a lot of questions here. But once you submit the application, it will take you to a second step. And that would give you an option to submit documentation, to upload documentation with your application. And we do encourage that whenever that's possible, because then that would allow Rhonda to be able to have some time to review that before we meet with you in person. If you don't have the ability to upload documentation through the portal, you can certainly do that other ways. You can either email that directly to Rhonda, and I've given you her email address, or you can mail it to us, or you can bring that in when you have your appointment. So once we receive that application, then we will contact you to schedule what we call an intake, an initial appointment. And Rhonda is going to cover what that appointment entails and where we go from there.
So first of all, with the documentation that we need, it's just legally we need some form of documentation stating that you do have a disability, and then how, hopefully on the documentation it would tell us how it impacts your life activity, including your learning. Sometimes, you know, if you had an IEP or 504 plan in high school, we could use that as our documentation. Or if you are seen by a doctor, something on a letterhead that the doctor can list what your disability is and how it impacts you. Or even if you have some medical testing done, we can use the results from the medical testing or the psychological educational testing, we can use those. We would like the documentation to kind of be current, provided by a qualified professional, and like we said, show the connection between the accommodation request and the functional impact of it that you have.
And a couple of things I wanted to add to that. If you don't have documentation, you know, we certainly still want you to connect with us. You know, we want to have a conversation about what your condition is and how that impacts you, and kind of walk through how we might be able to get some documentation, even though it's maybe not a currently diagnosed condition. We can talk through, you know, whether there might be a possibility of being able to get that documented. So with that said,
So once we received your application, or you initially contacted our office, you know, we'll reach out and we'll try to schedule an appointment that you and I would sit down with, and we'll talk over, set up your profile for us. And we would talk about the documentation that you have, how it impacts you, maybe talk about what kind of accommodations you maybe had in high school and how they would work here in the college level, or what would not be in the college level accommodation. And then we develop your accommodation plan, and making sure that this is something that you would have every semester that you would have for classes, but you can always, each semester, if you think that you need something different, or you think, you know what, I don't need this accommodation anymore, we can always add or take away the accommodation plan. So you just call me and we can make another meeting. We can discuss, you know, what you want to do about your accommodations. And then we'll talk about different policies and procedures that we have. For instance, our testing center has different policies that I'd go over with you so you understand what you need to do for the testing center. If you need audio books, I'd go over the procedures and how we go about getting the audio books for you. And then if you're going to use any of our assistive technology, I'll explain how all that would work for you too. So the things to remember when requesting accommodations is that every semester you must request, each semester you have to request, because your classes are going to be changing and you have different instructors, so you need to request each semester. It's not mandatory that you request, but you have to remember your accommodations are only active on when you actually request them. They're not retroactive. They do not, if you request in the middle of the semester, they don't go back to the beginning of the semester. They start right there. So that's something you need to keep in mind, that they're not retroactive. And it's always really important to regularly check your email, your Rock Valley email, because you never know. That's where we send information out to you. That's where the testing center would send information to you, financial aid, everybody. So regularly check your emails just to see what's going on. And if you're missing anything from our department, that's where we would try to be contacting you.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize the first 2 points, really the importance of that, you know, the proactive planning and making sure that accommodations are requested. Even if you think there might not be a chance that you're going to need them, we usually recommend that students go ahead, set up your accommodation plan, you know what your eligibility is, so that if you do decide, you know, that you're going to need that accommodation, that it's already there. And you don't have to go through the whole intake process of, you know, starting from scratch. So I know a lot of times students think that they can do okay, you know, without the accommodation, and that's fine. But it always is a good idea, you know, to have that plan developed so that you can move quickly if you decide that that's something you're going to need.
Also, once you request your accommodations, doesn't mean you have to use them. If you don't think you need extra time for a certain test, you don't need to ask for it. Some students just use it for finals and midterms. And so, I mean, you request them, but it doesn't mean you have to use them, but they are there if you do need them. So some examples of accommodations that we do offer: extended time for exams and quizzes. Our testing center does have a reduced distraction room. It's a quieter room about the size of an office, where you are in the room by yourself, so you don't have any distraction from anybody. And it's also a room if you need to dim the lights or make them brighter, if you need to walk around in the room, if you need to talk something out loud, you're not disrupting anybody else. We can put books in alternative format, like an audio book for you, or we can just give like a PDF, so it's a larger print. Or we do have MP3s where it's just the audio part. We try to provide note-taking assistance. You can record lectures, or we can ask other students if they'd be willing to share notes with you. We do have different types of assistive technology, like recorders or LiveScribe pins or software that we do check out to students. And then reduce course load and caption media, you know, if for the deaf and hard of hearing, if there's videos that the instructors are showing, that we try to get those captioned for you.
And in addition to the what we consider, I guess, traditional accommodations, you know, there's other things that we can help students with as well. For example, a lot of times Rhonda can work with students on communicating with instructors about, you know, what some of the accommodation needs may be, or just talking through the impact of a disability and how that might affect the student's ability to be successful. So those are all types of support that we can provide as well, that not just accommodations or things like that, but even just being able to have somebody to talk to if there's a problem or a challenge, and kind of troubleshooting and brainstorming solutions, that kind of thing. So, and talking about how to get those accommodations, again, we're going back to the portal, and I can't stress enough the importance of the portal. And as Rhonda said, this is going to be kind of the gateway to communication with our office. So it is really important that students regularly check email, and the email that they have on file with our office, because that will be the email that our communications get sent to. But in order to access the accommodations, I'm going to kind of walk you through a how-to, and you can find that actually on our website if you go to our page. So I'm going to get there. So on our webpage, if you go to student resources, and then right at the top, accessing AIM, the accommodations portal. So when you log into the portal, you are going to use your Rock Valley College student ID number and your password that you've already set up for everything else. It is single sign-on, which is great. You don't have to have a separate password to access the portal. So once you click that button and you log in, your information, you are going to see every student actually has their own profile. So your profile will be individualized to you and the accommodations that you're eligible for. So over on the left-hand side, you're gonna see a link for list accommodations. You're gonna click on that, and then every class that you're registered for should appear, and there will be a little checkbox in front of each. So every class for that particular semester that you need accommodations, you're gonna check the box and then hit step 2 to customize. Once you do that, you're going to have a box for each class that comes up. And within that box, there will be all of the accommodations that you've been approved for. And you can customize depending on the particular class, the needs that you may have, what you may or may not think you're gonna need. Select the accommodations that you want. You may have some for some classes and others for others. You don't have to have it the same for every class. And as Rhonda said, we really want you to only choose the accommodations that you plan to use, because that will send us a notification. For example, if you have alternative format and you check that, but you don't plan to have your books in alternative format, then we feel like that's something that we need to produce and to create for you when it may not be needed. So once you've selected your accommodations, you can hit the button to submit, and then that will initiate the process of sending us a notification that you have requested your accommodations. And at that point, we send an electronic copy to each of your instructors. So your instructors will each be notified electronically that you are eligible for accommodations and what those are. It is really important to have a proactive conversation with each teacher. That probably is the key to being successful. It's not the accommodation so much, but having that interactive conversations about the instructor knows what challenges you may have, how they can assist in eliminating some of the barriers or challenges, and then making sure if there's a mutual understanding of how the accommodations are going to be coordinated. Because even though they may know and they can see that you're going to be requesting extra test time, there's a lot of ways that extra test time can be provided. It can be provided in the classroom with maybe staying after class or before class. It can be provided in the testing center. So the instructor really needs to know how you would like that to be provided, just to prevent any kind of misunderstanding along the way. So that kind of covers the accommodation process, how to connect with us, how to request accommodations, what kinds of things might be available. We'd like to open the floor. If there are any questions for Rhonda and I, we'd be happy to answer them. I don't see anything at the moment. So we encourage you to reach out to us at any point. We would love to hear from you. We're here to help. Our job is to ensure that you have a good experience. So please do connect with us at any point.
Question. It says, what are your office hours? Well, we're open Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. My office hours are Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, but somebody is always here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5.
Our contact information is available here, our main office number and our department email, as well as where you can get more information on our services at our website. So thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you